Pythons can make some of the greatest snakes that you could ever possibly own. Sizable, fun to handle, not too darty. There's a million reasons why you'd want yourself a python, and probably bigger than this one. So let's go over the top 5 pythons that make great pets. I'm Adam. This guy doesn't have a name yet, so throw that in the comment section below. If you're watching Wicked's Wicked Reptiles, stick around. Number 5, carpet pythons. And I want to say thank you very much to my buddy Will Stone for sending me this footage of his carpet python so I could use. I don't have one of these guys, and there's a few reasons why. Let's just go over why you might want one. First of all, they're big and impressive. Well, most of them. There's a few different species. In fact, depending on who you ask, some say 6, some say 7, some say 8, but they're all part of the Morelia genus, which is very closely related to other pythons as well, and all of them are somewhat arboreal. Now these guys can be as small as 5 or 6 feet or as big as 9. Coastal carpet pythons are the big boys, they get up to 9 feet sometimes. And then your Irian are smaller, those guys around 5 feet is pretty common. And of course there's carpets, and there's a whole bunch of different species of carpet python as well. Did I say jungles? And I think you're going to notice a trend. So these are the first one on the list from Australia. These are an Australian python. They come from all over the island, and they come from parts of New Guinea as well, and some other islands as well. The island. It's a continent. They come from several parts of the continent, not the island of Australia. Now, one good thing about them, this is not a carpet python, by the way. One good thing about them is that they are good eaters. They're really good eaters, but they can be a little bit feisty, and that's a problem a lot of people have with them, is that they are a little bit nippy as babies and juveniles and subadults and adults. So basically their whole life they can be, but they can be tamed down. These guys aren't untamable beasts or anything ridiculous like that. It's just that these guys a lot of the time are hard to tame. They need a lot of space as well, but they are really good eaters, and they do look absolutely stunning. I can't think of too many other snakes that look this beautiful that aren't venomous snakes. Number 4 on the list, Wilma Pythons. Now, Wilma Pythons are a dream snake of mine. These guys are absolutely amazing. They're the perfect size, somewhere around 6 feet as adults, sometimes smaller, 4 to 6 feet. They've got this banding, this coloration of them, and this, I can't even describe, there's no other snake I can think of that looks like this besides black-headed pythons, which also can be great if you have, you know, the down payment of a home to spend on an animal. They're pretty expensive outside of Australia. But Wilmas look similar, they don't have the black head, and, well, they're really good eaters. Really good eaters. In fact, their biggest drawback is they're so good at eating, sometimes they think everything is food, like the hook and the walls of their enclosure, and you, and everything. But they will eat rodents, and unlike my man Pikachu here, who we might see later on the list, they're not going to go off food for 5 months just because. That's not something that Wilma Pythons normally do. The reason that they're called Wilma Pythons is because in Latin that means something about a shield, and the top of their head has a scale that's large and looks like a shield. So just super scientific explanation right there. Now, because of their size, 4.5 to 6 feet, very easy to house them. They can be housed in something like this, not with the dividers, of course, but they can be housed in a PVC that's, say, 2x4x1, or if you want to give it more height, whatever, but 2x4 type of footprint. And because their humidity and their heating isn't really that difficult either, and they eat all the time, I mean, that's a really great snake, and it's a big, impressive size. It'll give you a hug. It feels substantial. You're not going to hurt it. You can pass it to a child if you don't like them and want them to be eaten. I mean, if you don't want the child to be hurt, but to handle a snake. So, yeah, Wilma Pythons are pretty cool. It's hot in the reptile room, and Bob Ross wanted to say what's up. Number 3, Burmese Pythons, which in my opinion, and sounds kind of ridiculous, are the most similar. Oh, that was weird. It's so cold. Why are you so cold? Are the most similar to ball pythons. And that's just simply because they have very similar requirements, but, I mean, Burmese pythons are going to be a lot bigger than a ball python. In fact, Burmese pythons are the 4th or 5th largest species of snake in the entire world. And although uncommon, can grow to 18 feet. Now, 13 feet or less is going to be a lot more likely, but I mean, it's even for some males, 9 or 10 feet they might top out at. So it really depends what you want. If you want a bigger Burmese python or a smaller one, they are sexually dimorphic like that. So you get to pick a little bit like a ball python, but not drastically different. Burmese pythons are really good eaters, but they are expensive to feed. Because these guys eat things like pigs, or rabbits at least, when they're adults, they're a little bit more expensive, but you can go a few weeks or a month without feeding, right? Between feeding, some would say, depends. Do your research before you go and get one. Don't take some dumb guy doing a top 5 list and say, oh, well, he said 4 weeks. Burmese pythons are absolutely amazing, but they take a little bit more consideration than a ball python or anything else on the list, because you do need a second set of hands. That's my advice. So take it as you will, but if these guys think you're food, it can be a little bit dangerous. I gotta mention this every single time, but the likelihood of them thinking that you're food, or the likelihood of them acting up and striking at you, is very little. They're kind of the gentle giant of the world of big snakes. And if a big giant, good-eating, deliberately moving, docile type of big snake, did I say big twice, isn't good enough for you, they're common, they aren't super expensive, they come in a ton of morphs. I mean, what isn't there to love about Burmese pythons? Besides the fact that they're going to eat you at a house and home and take a big footprint in your living room. And number 2, of all the pythons that you could possibly keep, ball pythons. I mean, obviously they're going to be on the list. You know I love ball pythons. Most people love ball pythons. They're not pet rocks. They're not boring. This is Pikachu. This is my main man. This is the guy I pull out because I know that he's super calm. He's super cool. He just kind of moves around and he's beautiful. Albinos are kind of my thing. But I think that's something that's really interesting about ball pythons. They are individuals. And a lot of people will say, they're all the same. They're not. They all look very different. There's a bunch of different morphs. And then, of course, also, they just kind of act very different. If I pull Medusa out or if I pull Peter out, they act very different. Where with Pikachu, although calm, he is curious and really one of my favorite snakes to handle in my opinion. But why would you want one? Well, first of all, here, come on up here, buddy. First of all, I mean, they're an impressive size. Like, not super big, not ridiculously big. And in fact, Pikachu is not thin, but he's a little bit thinner than they can be. They can be a little bit thicker than this, just because Pikachu likes to go off food for 5 months and then start slamming rats like there's no tomorrow. There's a million different colors, right? And they can become different sizes depending on how you feed them. Small end, around 4.5 feet. Large end, 5.5 feet, likely, maybe even 6 feet sometimes. Although this is very uncommon, very unlikely to get a 6 foot, unless you get a Volta, which is a specific region of ball python. If you want me to do a separate video on this, I can. But Voltas look like this. These are big, big ball pythons, have big, big clutches, and they're really uncommon. But something more common, like an albino, or a normal, or a spider, or a fire, or whatever, these guys are all really easy to find, a lot of the times really cheap, easy to house. They'll only eat once a week or once every 10 days or once every 14 days, depending on their life. They'll never need anything bigger than a medium or a large size rat, but yeah, they go off food sometimes. And that is a big thing for some people. Some people don't like that. It freaks them out. If you only have one snake, I can understand you'd want to feed it every week, and if it doesn't eat and you got to throw it the rat, it's kind of a waste of a life. So there is a drawback, but not too many. And they're one of the only ones on the list that is not from Australia. These guys are from West Africa. Those Burmese pythons are from Asia, by the way. And if all that wasn't enough to say, hey, I really want myself a Pikachu, he actually lives in one of the enclosures behind me here. So they're really small. I mean, you can literally pick them up yourself. They weigh 22 pounds, these PVCs. So easy to house, cheap to house. Get a ball python. They're pretty cool. And number 1, greatest pet python of them all, spotted pythons, or any Antaresia species, in my opinion. And this whole list, of course, is in my opinion, if I haven't said that enough. They don't stay this small, by the way. We did a whole video about them last week. You guys wanted more of these tiny little pythons, so here we are. Spotted pythons are one of the 4 species in the genus Antaresia, the other ones being Stinson's pythons, children's pythons, and anthill pythons, or pygmy pythons. So these guys are the biggest of them all, and this is a baby, but they get to about 4 feet. No matter what you do, if you get an Antaresia type species, they're not going to be a big species, they're not going to be too much to handle, they're not going to be overly aggressive, all these things that you might not want in a python, right? Maybe, a Burmese python is too big, and a carpet python is a little bit too aggro and a little bit too nippy at you, and a Wilma python is too eager to eat and you're afraid it's going to bite you and make food out of you, and you don't want a ball python because all your buddies have them. Get a spotted python. Your buddies probably don't have them. They stay small, but they're still impressive. The colors are absolutely amazing. They eat well, but they're not going to try to eat you, and they're not going to start nipping at you for no reason. I can't think of a better python than this. Not only that, but they're fun to watch. They're curious. What it was always described to me is this is a carpet python with training wheels. Smaller, still semi-arboreal, isn't going to give you all the problems that a carpet python might, because some people just don't have a big enclosure. Some people want something that stays smaller, but is still curious and moves around a lot, and is just interesting and interested in the world around it. Where some people think ball pythons are pet rocks, I wouldn't agree. No one's going to say that a spotted python or any of the Antaresia species are pet rocks. Period. And that enclosure that I was talking about, we're talking about something that is 4 by 2 by 2. That is more than enough. Some people will say even smaller than that for this species of snake. I can't really think of anything that's going to be easier to keep in this list. I mean, ball pythons are pretty close, but I still think that these guys are a little bit easier than a ball python even. And if you're wondering if this tiny little python acts like a python, it certainly does. A lot of people, they gripe that some smaller animals, they don't act like pythons. They act darty and zippy. And that's the problem with some people, why some people don't like corn snakes or milk snakes or whatever else. And these guys are not going to be like that. So I think that if you're looking for a perfect snake, this might be the new top of the line, top of the list for most of the top 5s moving forward. Still hit subscribe though, because I mean, we might talk about other stuff. So there you go. In my opinion, the top 5 pet pythons that you could possibly have. What do you think? Did I forget something? Should I have added something else? Put in the comment section below. And what should next week's video be about? Every video idea I take from the comment section from a viewer like you, so put it down there and you might be the inspiration for next week's video. As always, thank you, a special thank you to our Patreon supporters. I can't believe, like, the overwhelming support is overwhelming. It's unbelievable to me. So if you want behind the scenes stuff or want to see how many times I couldn't say pet python in a row in this video, bloopers and stuff like that, Patreon's the place to do it. Hit subscribe, and I think I've done all the YouTube like button. I don't know. See you on Monday. No, Thursday. See you on Thursday.